welcome, welcome, welcome. We come here today. It's such a wonderful Sunday, right? We've been on this incredible journey, this adventure, if you will, that Jesus took the last week of his life. And we sat there and wondered. I started asking some questions about this thought or this idea, why? If Jesus knew what he was going to be going through, which he did, why would he do it? And so I started asking that question, and over the last 2 weeks, we spent a lot of time going there. This idea of seeing all the suffering and everything that happened, and then, but there's got to be something else, right? There's got to be a bigger reason for him to do that. Why? And what came to mind was this idea, well, maybe, just maybe, there was something on the other side of all of this. And certainly, when we look at what happened eventually with his resurrection, there was another side to it. So in other words, there was a point for it. There was a reason for it. And so in a sense, what happened, Jesus knew, yep, I'm going to go through some stuff. And I'm being nice when I call it stuff. I could use another word here. But I'm going to go through something, and on the other side of it, there's going to be something bigger, something better. But this process is not going to be easy. It's not. It's going to be extremely difficult. It's going to take me and break me down to almost to where I have nothing left. But it's going to be worth it, right? And so we talked about this process in the first couple of weeks. The last 2 weeks I've talked about this desire. The soul wants to do something. It wants to go further. It wants to expand. It wants to grow. I talked about the setup, the right people, the right places, the right things, everything in absolute perfection because of who and what you are and because of the calling that you asked the universe for. You needed all of this to happen, as crazy as that may sound, for this thing to take place, and then all of a sudden there's the wound, that's the thing that you carry, that's going to help you go further than you've ever been before, that would make absolutely no sense for you to choose it, never, ever, ever, and yet it happens. Every single person in this room has had this happen to them at some point or another. I've talked about the idea of the wound being deep in some cases and being light in other places. And then I talked about this idea of suffering. Yes, there is suffering. There's no getting around it. It is suffering. It is hard. It's difficult, right? And then that ultimately led to, at the very end, Jesus goes through the crucifixion. And the crucifixion, when you look at it on the physical sense, my God, seriously, one of the most brutal forms of death that you could ever imagine possible. But when you start to interpret and understand it metaphysically, what you understand is going on, there is an epic battle that's going on between Jesus' ego. It shouldn't look like this. Why is this happening? This is wrong. This shouldn't be happening to me. This is all screwed up. The ego's saying that, but guess what? Then there's another consciousness that's going like, no, actually, this is perfect. This is exactly what you signed up for, so that you can learn, you can grow, you can expand. And so there's this battle, right? Because the ego is saying, no, 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 no. And yet, your indwelling Christ, your soul, is going like, yeah, but there's something here on the other side of this that I'm really wanting. And while I may not be able to see it, it's there, right? And so we've got these two operating systems. And one of the things that the Fillmores realized, one of the things that Jesus realized, was you're dealing with two operating systems. And when all of a sudden you start to go, hey, I want to change. I'm going to believe what this guy's talking about. I'm going to believe what Jesus said, what the Fillmore said, all these other masters have said. What's happening is there's two operating systems. There's the egoic operating system, and then you get an upgrade into Christ consciousness, and it is there. It is absolutely there. And when you start to play with this stuff, you start going back and forth between the two of them for a while. And so you're going, the ego is going like, no, you can't. Don't change. Why are we moving? Why are you doing all this stuff, right? And they're yank, 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 yank. And then you start breathing life into this other part of you that's there, just needs to be dusted off a little bit, is what I would say. And then you can start playing with this thing. So when you look at the crucifixion from a metaphysical standpoint, it's the crossing out in consciousness of certain errors, and I would say those certain errors are all those messages we got when we were younger about who and what we are, our relationship to God, our relationship to each other, our relationship to the universe, what's life about, all of those things that we got when we were younger, those errors that have become fixed states of mind. In other words, they are now in the subconscious mind, and they're just going, right? It's a giving up of the whole personality. In other words, we're starting to let go of the ego in order that the Christ consciousness may be expressed. Now, I know there's some teachings out there that say get rid of the ego. I'm not a big fan of that. I just think there needs to be correct balance. I think right now the ego for most, at least when I started my journey, was way up here and control everything, and my other consciousness was way down here. And then as you start to do this work, here's what starts to happen. And you just put it in balance. So that now I'm being operated, I'm using my heart. Instead of my brain, I'm going into my heart more and more and more often. I've always said this, though. We live in a third-dimensional reality, although that's shifting. Shh, don't tell anybody. We're shifting. But you need to walk out those doors. You need to pay those bills. You need to take care of stuff. And so the ego can help us at times. So I don't want to get rid of my ego. I'm perfectly fine with it. I just want it balanced correctly. And I think that's what this is all about. It's all about balance. Because let's face it, you can get to the point, and I'm sure you may know one or two people that are really earthly because they are so out there in whoa-whoa land that they're no earthly good. They really, it's just like, hello? Hey, I'm here. Come on, come back down here. Put your feet on the earth, right? Do we know one or two of those people? Yeah. And so there's a balance in all of it, right? And so what happens is in this process, and I think it's just really cool because this is something I didn't talk about last week, the very, very end. And this is when we're in that process. This is when we're suffering. This is when it's tough, it's dark, it's, oh, what do I do? Go back and look at what Jesus did, what he really did at the very, very, very end. He did three things, and I'm telling you, if you can use these as a tool when you're going through a really difficult spot, I'm not saying everything's going to become magically perfect, but I'm saying it'll make things easier for you so you can move through whatever you're going through much, 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 much quicker. When they talked about this idea of going through the shadow of the death, it didn't say go down there and pitch a tent. And some of us think that's what we got to do. We got to go down there and we're going to sit in there. We're just going to sit in the muck and the mire and never come out of it. That's not, I believe, especially now. I don't believe that's what we're meant to be doing anymore. I think there's a better way. There's a faster way to get through this process of the suffering, of this wounding. And when you really look at what happened to Jesus at the very end, do you remember when he was looking down and he saw the guards and they're sitting there and what are they doing? They're gambling. What are they using to gamble with? His stuff. So he's on a cross dying and they're sitting there gambling his stuff as what the prize is if somebody wins it. And what does he do? Forgive them. Forgive them. Right? And then he's got two guys on both sides, right? These two guys that are robbers and everything else like that. What does he do? He forgives the one, right? Forgiveness. So in this process, when you're struggling and you're stuck and you just cannot figure out what the heck is going on, start with forgiveness. He forgives. Forgiveness is this idea. What do we need to forgive? I don't know. Do you need to forgive yourself? Do you need to forgive somebody else? Do you need to forgive a circumstance? Do you need to whatever you need to forgive, start there. It's a really, really good place to be able to start. Start with forgiveness. And then what he does, and again, this is at the very, very end. Then what does he do? He accepts. He finally goes, yeah, this is what it is. I'm not going to deny it. I'm not going to ignore it. I'm not going to pretend it's not there. I'm going to accept this is what's going on, right? And then finally and lastly, at the very, very end, surrender. Surrender. That's what he does. Those three things, if you're going through a hard time, if you can just kind of play with those a little bit, whatever you're going through, I'm not saying it's going to stop tomorrow, but in terms of getting you through to the other side, because remember, we're still in the not fun part yet. to help get you through the other side, using these tools are really, really beautiful and are helpful when you're going through your own stuff. So then, what happens? Jesus is taken down off the cross and he's put into the tomb, and he is there. He's there from Friday, Good Friday, hanging out, and then Saturday, and then Sunday. And it doesn't really seem like there's very much going on. Oh, quite contraire. There's stuff going on. We just don't realize it. Metaphysically, it's a resting in God. We are resting in God and at the same time gathering strength for the power of the greater demonstration to follow. That's what the tomb means metaphysically. We're resting. I started to process my own suffering when I've gone through extremely, extremely difficult times in my own life. And here's the thing. What I have observed is when I'm going through these times, there is something that happens while we're resting. And my observation has been, I get cracked open. In other words, my own belief and my own real experience. What happens is there is a window that is opened in my soul that allows me to see something I could have never have seen before. There's this opening. And if I've been through this a couple of times, and what I've learned to do is to just trust. Like, yes, I know all this is going on, but I also know that there's got to be another side to it. In other words, it's not just all about the suffering. There's a crack that happens, and by cracking, you are opened up. And when you're opened up, what comes in? Light. Light comes in. Healing comes in. Knowledge comes in. A way of looking at something changes. It's different. And all of a sudden, it's like, whoa. I will never forget that. I'll never forget the pain that I went through. I've shared the story with you about my divorce, and I just remember going, like, this makes absolutely no sense to me, right? And then all of a sudden, I started to realize some things like, wow, I was really in a horribly codependent relationship. I had completely and totally lost myself. I didn't even know what my frickin' first name was, let alone what I wanted or who I was or anything else like that. There is no way that that happens if I'm staying back here. It doesn't happen. And so my soul wanted me on a deeper level to take the next step forward so that I could get out of it and I could go back to myself and take my power back. And so it's this in the tomb, when everything is calmed down and we're resting, there's this opening that happens. And all of a sudden this knowledge comes in and it's like, whoa. But I couldn't see it when I was back here. But what I'm telling you is my experience has been in this opening, things are shared with you that won't normally be shared. And the other thing I experienced is that window is only going to be open for a little bit of time. Like, you better grab it while it's open. Unfortunately, we don't always do that. Why? Because we're in so much pain, we start doing everything but slowing down enough to hear or listen to what's in the opening. And then so what happens is the window, it's open. It's only open for a little bit of time. Get out your journal, start writing and start listening. See what's in there. But that window is only open for a short period of time and then it starts to close again. Why? Because that crack, it starts to heal. It starts to shut. And so when we pay attention, if we can do that, then it's like, wow, so this was worth it. It's like, yes, because then we can see. And it's like, oh, I get that, right? And then what happens? Then Jesus walks out of the tomb. The resurrection, he's alive. He's back. Only he's fully conscious. He's fully in his Christ consciousness, right? So what does the resurrection mean metaphysically? It's the awakening, the arising to spiritual consciousness of the I am. And that's what it is. And that's what the example Jesus wanted all of us to understand. Every single one of us has this consciousness inside of us. Every single person does. And that's what he was trying to show. Raising to spiritual consciousness. So in other words, what are we doing? We're fully flipping The operating system. Egoic operating system over here. Christ consciousness operating system over here. Jesus, when he died, when he resurrected, he completely flipped it. Flipped the whole thing over. And so now he's operating purely out of Christ consciousness. Right? And so that's what happens. And so then he started hanging out. He comes back. Remember, he talks to Mary Magdalene. Mary Magdalene doesn't even recognize him because he's so bright. And then he also says what? He also says, hey, I'm not quite done yet. I'm not quite done yet. Don't touch me. I'm not quite done yet. And he hangs out for another 40 days. And for those of you who don't know, metaphysically, 40 days stands for a cycle of completion. So in other words, and you see 40 days and 40, you go through when the world got flooded, there was 40 days and 40 nights of flooding. Jesus spent 40 days and 40 nights out in the desert. This is another 40 days and 40 nights. So it's this cycle, this process of completion. You go through this entire process. And so Jesus stuck around for another 40 days. Of course, everybody's looking at him going, whoa, what is up with that, right? But he did it. And then eventually he leaves. So I want to talk about the rest of the process, right? Because remember that everything I kept saying was Jesus knew that there was a process. He knew he could use the process to go to another state of consciousness, another level of being. So this completes the process then. The desire, the setup, the wounding, the suffering, resting, and then finally the awakening or freedom. Because in my opinion, when I look at the story of Jesus, what it boils down to is the ultimate freedom. He is fully connected with who and what he is. He's fully connected with the source. He has nothing that's holding him back. And he's able to live free like that. And so it is an awakening. It is freedom. So when I think about the celebration of Easter, I think, what an amazing gift. What an amazing gift. And I also think in some ways that it kind of bums me out that people don't get that. And that's why I love Unity. Because Unity really has taught me, like, look, it's not, Jesus is like cool. Like, I'm really cool with Jesus. He's a bud. He's a mentor. He's a friend. And literally one of my best friends. And so I've got this incredible relationship with Jesus, but it's at a whole different level than what I would say a traditional message is. And so I don't look at Jesus outside of myself and go, wow, look at what he did. He is the example. I don't think he's the exception. I don't. Nor does Unity. Unity doesn't believe he was the exception. We believe he's the example. We believe everybody can follow him. Now, my suggestion would not choose going and putting yourself on a cross and getting crucified. Just saying. There may be a different way, right? There may be a different way of doing this. And in my own belief, what I'm going to share with you is I do believe that's what's going on here and now. With the consciousness on this planet shifting from a third-dimensional reality, I believe we can do it differently. And so I'm just going to plant some seeds this morning is, what if I decided to use a different process? Could I use a different process? Could I do it where I don't have to suffer so much? Where there's not so much pain? You are incredibly powerful. You can have and create whatever you would like to have and create. And what I'm saying is, while this is an amazing process, a lot of people have used this process, guilty as charged many times in my life. What if there's a different way? And what I'm going to suggest is my belief is because we're shifting, that there is a different way. And there's a lighter way. And there's an easier way for us to get our lessons. And we don't have to go through so much pain and so much wounding and so much suffering. This idea or thought of going, hey, you know what? I think I want to try something easier. I want to try something lighter. I want to try something where I can get all my lessons, I can grow, I can expand, but I don't need the spiritual 2x4 planted between my eyes every 3 years, right? Which we all have done. And it's like, could we do it differently? I hope that we decide to start doing it differently. I really do. I think it would be a lot more fun. And yet we can still expand, we can still grow, we can still learn, but we just do it a little bit differently, right? And then I think to myself, well, how can we do this? And then I thought, the calling. What are we doing this year? We're doing this thing called the calling. What is a calling? Calling is where you're having something that's tapping you on the shoulder. It's saying something in your heart. It's whispering to you, pay attention. There's something here. There's something going on. Listen to me. Talk to me. Listen. So there's this calling. And if we just slow down enough to hear whatever that calling may look like for you, and that's what we're doing this year. Many know that I'm a huge fan of the Way of Mastery, and in the Way of Mastery, there's a beautiful quote. Therefore, indeed, each of you knows that there is a longing within you. There's a longing within you that cannot and will not any longer be denied. So no matter how hard you're trying to run and how hard you're trying to hide from this thing cannot be denied. You know from the Christ within you, the Christ stirred within you and is rising to take its rightful place as you master your mind, your heart, your body, and your soul. Yeah. Something tells me I don't think you would be in this room right now if that wasn't happening inside of you. Just kind of guessing. And again, but it's going to look a little bit different, right? It's not going to always be the same. You're going to have your own way of doing it. And then, of course, you go back to it, and for those that are fairly new here, you go, well, like, okay, I think I kind of get what he's talking about. Not sure, he's a little weird, but I'm listening. How do you start it? How do you start this process? It's so easy. Go back to Eric Butterworth and discover the power within you. What does he say? Making a simple decision to accept the indwelling Christ within you. That's how it all starts. That's all it takes. That's all it's needed. And then the Spirit will guide you from that moment on. And by doing so, you'll then follow Jesus' guidance and make the same discovery in yourself that he found within himself. It's simple. It's simply a decision. I'm going to start following this thing called the indwelling Christ. I'm going to start paying attention to it. I'm going to do the things that are helpful for me to start listening to this thing. And this thing is going to start to talk back to you. It's going to start to whisper in your ear. It's going to start making suggestions of what you should do. It's going to talk to you about, I don't know, maybe a book you should read. It's going to talk about, I don't know, coming to this crazy place on Sunday morning and listening to this crazy guy called Mike. Maybe it's about picking up a guitar and start playing music again. Maybe it's about, I don't know what it is for you. But what I do know is once you start paying attention to it, this thing will start calling you in a certain direction, and you'll start to get interested in certain things. And if you keep yourself open to those nudges, the next thing you know, it's kind of like the snowball effect starts to happen. And it starts going, and it starts going, and it starts going. Right? And I love this picture because to me the picture represents this idea of just slowing down enough, pausing in what you're doing, and listening. Everything that you could ever want is inside of you. It's not in a book. It's not come in here and listen to me. It's not in everything that's out there. And yet, everything on this planet, on earth right now, is saying what? Me, 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 me. Listen to me, listen to me, listen to me. Look at this book, look at this whatever, look at this class, look at this course, look at all this stuff. And there's nothing wrong with that. But you know what all that is? Brain. It's your brain. And what happens, especially in this society, we have a tendency to put more power and more effort and more of our time in developing this, and we forget about this. And I think really ultimately Jesus' message is listen to your heart. Pay attention to what's inside of you. And in that listening, you will find yourself. You'll find this relationship with the divine. You'll find this connection with each other. You'll find this connection with Mother Earth. You'll do the most beautiful dance you could ever imagine doing. And that is with love, and that is with yourself, and that is with God. And for me, I don't think it gets any better. So, as you have the rest of your day, and you celebrate this Easter season, remember Jesus. He was really cool. Maybe take a minute and say, yo, JC, that was cool, right? Say that. But then also understand, maybe take a minute and go, yo, whatever your first name is, you're doing a really good job. You're amazing. You brought me to this place. Looked kind of crazy for a while, but now you brought me back to within myself, which is where I always wanted to go to begin with. And start developing that relationship with yourself and watch it grow and grow and grow and grow. It'll be spectacular. Thank you so much for being here this morning. Thank you so much for being who and what you are. Thank you for having the courage to come down in this time and place where stuff is absolutely insane and holding the light that you do. Each and every one of you is doing an amazing job. I get it. We all want to do a little bit better. We all want to do a little bit different. We all think we could do better, but you're doing a fabulous job shining, holding space, anchoring this new way, this new light. You are doing that. I don't care if you come in here and just listen. You're doing an amazing job. And we are lucky, lucky, lucky to have you. I am so grateful for each and every one of you. You give me the opportunity to do what I love to do. If you don't show up, I don't do this. And I just want you to know that means the world to me. Seriously, it means the world to me. So thank you for doing that. I hope you have an amazing Easter. God bless, namaste, and namawe.
Hey, it's Reverend Mike here. I just wanted to stop for a moment before you get on with your day, and thank you so much for spending time with us this morning. It means the world to us, and I just wanted to let you know if there's anything that we can do to make your experience even better, please do not hesitate to reach out by going to our website. I also wanted to offer you the opportunity for us to get together and sit down so I could get to know you a little bit better and answer any questions that you have. I can either do that by either getting together in person, have a cup of coffee, or we can meet online via Zoom. If you're interested, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can reach me at michael@courage2thrive.com. And lastly, if you find these messages are helping you, we would be tremendously grateful if you'd consider donating to the center. The best and the easiest way to do that is simple. Just go to our website. Again, thank you so much. Hope you have a great day. Hope you're doing well. God bless, and we hope to see you soon. Bye-bye now.